Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ballroom Mastery. I'm Vaughan, the founder. Awesome to have you here. Thank you for tuning in this week. Today is Latin arm styling. Now, perhaps you have felt your arms a little bit like this, right? Like when you first start to dance, it's like, what are these things doing? Oh my God. It's one of the most requested areas of dancing that I have found, asking hundreds of people all across the world in a survey, what do you want to know about your dancing? How would you like to improve your dancing the most? In the Latin American field, they're like, arm styling, my arms are so ugly. They look like and feel like a magoo. If that's you, then you are in the right place. I want to thank you for tuning in live, and I want to thank you for watching the replay if that's where you are. Let me know where you're from. Leave a like, a comment, a share below. I'd love you to share this with your friends because I'm here to help you master your ballroom and Latin dancing. Now, arm styling is a really interesting concept because when you first learn to dance, right, like you see the finished product in a lot of dances. You look at them and go, wow, they are amazing. How do I do that? Oh, I know, it must be my arms. Clearly, my arms are what is lacking in the department of becoming a good dancer. And to think that would be a little bit foolish because when you see the finished product, you are seeing years and years of development and training behind closed doors when nobody was watching them. Remember this, all champions were beginners at one point. So we have to realize that there's sort of a journey we're on, okay? When you first learn to dance, it's technique driven, right? Technique is sort of the paramount thing. I always talk about technique because it's the most important thing to create freedom in your dancing. It's what we go back to as professionals to enhance our dancing, and it's what we study and ultimately want to master. But to move into the realm of expression, which is when you see arm styling coming through, well, we have to make sure our technique's good. We also have to make sure we've got something called mechanics starting to develop, which is how we use our body, and then we need to understand musicality for arm styling to make sense. But in today's lesson, I'm going to give you a very basic exercise for you to practice that's going to help you get more connected to your arms. You see, when you first learn to dance, you're all hands, legs, and feet, right? Like you're all over the place. You're like, I can't even think of putting my hand somewhere, let alone like style my arm whilst I'm trying to just put my foot in a position to freaking music. Are you nuts? As you become more intermediate and advanced, it's like, you know what? I'm getting this foot thing. My foot is behaving. I can put it where I want within reasonable control, right? I'm starting to develop balance, coordination, right? When that starts to happen, it's a bit easier for your arms. So let's have a little history lesson on the arms to begin with. First of all, and I'm not talking about like what you're physically born with. You have arms, I hope, to start with. But here's the thing. The arms styling in the modern day of dancing is vastly different to what it was in the original technique. In the original technique, it was written out in a way that the arms should never come above the shoulder line, okay? The reason for that was because they were wearing tail suits. So you can imagine wearing a ballroom suit and doing Latin. You know, you can't really get your arm lines very high. It looks ugly, right? Because it will raise the shoulder. As time went on, technique got revised, developing of dancing happened, so people became a lot more athletic, it became a lot more stretchy, if you will, moves became a lot more powerful, graceful, like just a whole development came through. And so it was necessary for dancing to essentially evolve with that in terms of arm styling. Now, you need to know the category you're in. Let's say you're a starter dancer, okay? There's a basic arm movement you need to start practicing today so that when you move up the ranks, arms become easier. So maybe you're a social dancer, okay? Or a medalist, or you're a hobby dancer. Perhaps you're a low-grade competitor. Maybe you're an amateur competitor. Maybe you're a serious amateur competitor. Maybe you're a professional and a teacher or a coach, right? And you're in those domains. At each level, you're going to have different skills and competencies. So the expectation is very different on what you should be practicing, what you should be developing. So in the beginning stages, arm styling is not something you really try to develop. It is something you want to be aware of. It is something you want to aim to work towards, like you need to use your arms. However, it isn't the core focus, right? I mean, because if it is, what is it taking away from? It's taking away from the fundamental of technique. You need to get your feet, right? You need to get the balance and posture and coordination. You need to get your rhythm working. If you can get that happening, arms become a lot easier because arms in and of themselves are something you work on at an advanced level, full on. like they become a thing you do as a lesson or as a training or as a period of time to just develop and practice and work on, because they express everything you're saying. They show the gestures of the movement toward your partner. They bring the audience in. They finish off the years of training underneath. So here's what I want you to think about with your arms. You've got your basic structure of an arm movement for Latin American dancing, which you could easily say would just be, it's a movement out to the side like that, right? So the arms are free flowing. Now, one of the interesting things about normal technique is, or when I say normal technique, I say original technique, is it says arms need to be natural and unaffected. Now, I don't know about you, but my arms were nothing but affected when I first learned to dance. When I first learned to dance, my arms, I was like this. I did my voltas, right? And I'd be like, oh my God, what the hell? Why is my arm doing that, right? I didn't know. It's because my nervous system would automatically do something as I moved, and I wasn't aware of it. Now, for me to fix that would take a respectable amount of practice and training. So I had to be willing to go through a bit of a stage of looking terrible, right? So that's part of the deal. Having said that, the arm itself, over time, I started to get to change and develop by way of some basic practice and exercises. One of the overarching things in arm styling, I suppose, and arm coordination is understanding your arms are natural and unaffected. What that really means is that natural is trained, and unaffected means that they're not like an awkward movement. You know, they're not throwing you off balance in relationship to the movement you're trying to do. For example, if you're trying to spin, you can't have your arms go behind your body because they're going to throw you off. So with that in mind, we then need to think, okay, what is some basic practice I can do to make my arms more coordinated every single time I dance? So what I used to do is I would stand in front of a mirror, and I didn't need to practice like a figure of eight in the rumba, for example. But what I would do, and what Penny would teach me to do, was to get my arm to go out. Now, how do our arms move, first of all? Let me ask you this. Right below, where do arm movements originate in the body? 3 seconds to answer. Where do arm movements originate in the body? Do they come from your mental? Do they come from your eyes? Do they come from your shoulders? Where do arm movements come from? Does it come from your hand? The answer is they come from your back, all right? And particularly this middle section, up through the shoulder blades, out through the shoulder, through the elbow, through the wrist, and finally in the hands. Now, if you do a sideways arm movement, your arm movement should not still be above the shoulder. That looks ugly. It follows a descending line. Shoulder, elbow, wrist, and then the fingers, yeah? All the way down. That way, if I do it side on, you're creating a nice shape and you're creating nice space. If your hand flicked up at the end, you'll notice it looks incredibly ugly. So we want to understand that that is a basic structure to a normal, unaffected, and natural arm movement if you're just doing a sideways action, for example, which is very common in Cha Cha and Rumba. But I found those dances to be the greatest ones to practice, to develop arms through, particularly to learn coordination. So what you can do is stand like this and get your arms to follow that line. So if I'm standing side on, my back initiates the movement, okay, comes from the back in the center, and then out through the shoulder, then the elbow, then the wrist, then the fingers finish it off. And please remember, your hands matter. They shouldn't be a claw. You always have to focus on the hands having the finishing moment, because they matter so much as well. Because if I do a movement and my hand's here, you're looking at this hand going, what is this dude doing? You know, if I do a New Yorker and the arm's there, it's ugly, you know? So the hands in and of themselves are something you actually practice. On a side note, I used to sticky tape these two fingers together right here because they did not like to stick together. So I couldn't do any Latin hands, so to speak. I was like, I really sucked at this. So I sticky taped it so I practiced in New Yorker, I could at least place them there, you know? Now, again, let's come back to the main thing. Originally, arms were, shoulder level. They moved at a very basic social and medalist level. Arms move away from our bodies when we're moving away from our partner, and they move towards our body when we're moving toward our partner. That's great for the beginner dancer. That's great for starting to learn arm styling. So any routine you have, most your choreography when you first start should be with a partner. It shouldn't be away doing solo work. It should be partnering, leading and following, learning to move. So your arm movements, they can come in, right? They can go out, and you practice these basic arm movements the way I was explaining before. You want the arm to be coming from the shoulder, through the elbow, through the wrist, and through the fingers. Now, as it goes out, it can come back in and around. And you want it to make contact with your body. So again, if it doesn't, it's going to be a very ugly movement here. So the arm should come right in and around and then back out. And that now I'm starting to create something a little nicer. You know, it's connected. It's not just this stirring soup out on the side here, hanging up high. So remember, the arm itself is training, right? Like we've got to look at it. On a more advanced level, arms, we can do things like create static arms. We can create dynamic arms. We can create arms that are constant with impulse, with impact, with strength, or what we call a stylized arm. So New Yorker is a good example. So we could do a New Yorker, right, and have a styled arm and put it there, back of our head, right? Like, where do you want it to go? The arm itself can be constant, you know, it can grow. And the arm itself can have impulse, boom, it can move out and then come back. So those are much later down the track. Don't worry, you can try practicing it now. I'm not saying not to do that, but we want to understand the stages and phases of our dancing so we can get there and become competent and look good on the finished product, because arms themselves are such a difficult thing to master that the advanced dancers work on them quite a lot. But in the beginning stages, we're going to work on mastering fundamentals. Here is one more practice exercise. So we know that we've got these arms going right and left. We're circling around our center. The movement comes from the back. You can see if I don't do it from my back, how freaking weird it looks, yeah? It's like, this is some strange arms. Well, this is, when I first started, I was like, Mr. Miyagi, what's going on? Wax on, wax off. So they move in, they move out like that. Boom, 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 boom. Now, then they can come around. Now, the next exercise, if this is a new day for you in your arms, you're like, you know what? I've had enough of looking like a Magoo. I want to dance stronger. Well, we've got to understand port de bras. So port de bras is a ballet position where the middle two fingers come in, and it's like you're holding tennis balls under your armpits, right? So you create that circle. Bring your hands up to chest height. Turn the arms out without the hands moving. And then rotate the wrists so the hands gently go up, and then bring the fingers down like you're painting the air. So if I do it side on, we're here, the arms come up to shoulder level, we bring them out, we turn the wrists so the fingers are up and the palms are to the floor, and then we bring the hands down. Now I'm very aware of when I'm doing this that I'm trying to create a softness within my arms. There's no rigidity, there's no tension, but there is tone. And as I do all these movements, I'm also acutely aware of my space. Where are my arms going? They're not back here, as you can tell, and they're certainly not out here. They're actually trying to be within these areas. Now, that's a really awesome exercise to practice with rumba walks, because you can, I'll give myself some more room, you can hold your arms in that port de bras position, and then you can commence your rumba walks, and you can bring the arms up to chest height, then out. Then you can bring them down to normal there, right? As you do your rumba walks. And then, shoom. You see the idea? So by doing these basic movements, you start to get a coordination. And now this is for man and lady. Then after a while, your arms start to take on like a life of their own. It's like, oh man, this makes sense. Like I can create a gesture, and like, oh, this feels awesome. You can bring them up, out, right? You can bring them across. You know, and start to create these things. If you're a woman, you can be all like sensual and feminine, because within your arms, you're going to feel a dynamic range of, I suppose, a sliding scale between 10 and 100, 10 being the most relaxed your arm could be, because you don't want it at 0, you're dead, and 100 being like full-on flexation and too much tension. Your arms have this sliding scale of energy in them, yeah? And so when you move, you should be able to feel and control that, but it always has to be in relation to what your body is doing. Meaning, what are you doing technically? What is the step requiring of you? If it's a New Yorker, there is so much you can do with that step. It's like one of the first figures in the technique book, yet every couple does it. Everyone on the comp floor has a New Yorker variation or combination. What makes it your own is the years of training you put behind it, the basics you master. So I would say, starting point, get your arms going port de bras and out, add them into your rumba walks, and start practicing doing your arm movements sideways until you like the look of them. Lastly, before I leave, I remember hearing Graham Oswick talk about dancing. How do we judge it? He goes, well, the easiest way to judge dancing is, does it look normal? And I'm like, that is awesome. So if your arms are essentially looking like, you know, one of those like aliens out of Star Wars, and they're like, what? Like, that isn't normal. It's not gonna feel good. It's not gonna look good. Not normal. If your arms start to create a more, I suppose, contrasting or complementary movement to what your body's doing, yay, you're freaking winning. Okay, listen, thank you for tuning in today. Love having you here. Appreciate you being here. Stay tuned for more free training coming your way. Check out ballroommastery.tv. Look out for all the cool courses and things we've got coming up your way. And I hope this serves you. This is Vaughan. Rock it out. I'm going to tune this out now, and thank you for being here.